They were already walking away. The decision had been made. The paperwork was waiting for a golden Labrador, the safe choice, the easy beginning. And then, for no clear reason, they stopped. Not because a dog barked, not because someone called out to them, but because one kennel was too quiet and somehow louder than all the rest. Inside, a German shepherd sat motionless, not asleep, not resting, just waiting for nothing. They should have kept walking. They had a plan, but some choices don't announce themselves. They don't ask permission. They just wait until you notice them. And once you do, they don't let you leave unchanged. They hadn't come to make a hard decision. They hadn't come to second-guess themselves or complicate their lives. They came for a Labrador, friendly, predictable, a dog that fit the future they'd already imagined. What they didn't know yet, what no one tells you when you walk into a shelter, is that some dogs don't need to move to be seen. Some don't need to beg to be remembered. They just exist in a way that makes walking away feel like abandonment. This is the story of the dog they didn't come for, the one who didn't ask for anything, and the couple who couldn't explain why that mattered more than the plan they'd spent weeks making. The Labrador's name was Bailey. 3 years old, house-trained, good with kids. The kind of dog that appears in family photos on Christmas cards. Golden fur, catching sunlight, tongue out, tail mid-wag. The couple had done their research. They'd read the breed profiles, watched the training videos, prepared their home. They knew what they wanted, a companion that fit into their life without rewriting it, something manageable, something that made sense. Bailey made sense. When they arrived at the shelter, the staff recognized them immediately. They'd called ahead, filled out the preliminary paperwork, asked all the right questions. This wasn't an impulsive decision. This was planned, responsible. The kind of adoption that shelters hope for, people who thought it through, who understand the commitment. Bailey was everything the listing promised. Calm during the meet and greet, responsive to commands. He leaned into their touch, made eye contact, wagged on cue. He was exactly what they'd come for. The shelter coordinator smiled as she pulled the adoption papers. "He's going to be so happy with you," she said, and she meant it. Bailey had been waiting 3 weeks, not long by shelter standards, but long enough. He deserved this. They deserved this. It should have felt like the end of the search, the relief of a decision made, a plan executed. But as the coordinator talked them through the final steps, vaccination records, microchip information, the recommended vet in their area, something felt unfinished. Not wrong, just incomplete. They nodded along, asked the follow-up questions, signed where they were supposed to sign, but their attention kept drifting, not to Bailey, who sat patiently at their feet, but to the hallway behind them, to the rows of kennels they'd walked past on the way in. The shelter was loud, dogs barking, volunteers calling out, metal gates clanging, the kind of organized chaos that makes you want to finish your business and leave. But underneath all of that noise, there was something else, a silence that didn't belong, a stillness that felt deliberate. They told themselves it didn't matter. They had what they came for. Bailey was perfect. The plan was working. But as they stood there, paperwork half finished, they both knew they weren't leaving yet. Not until they looked back. The kennel stretched down a long corridor. Chain-link gates, concrete floors, fluorescent lights humming overhead. Each one held a different story. Some dogs pressed against the bars, tails wagging frantically. Others barked, jumped, spun in tight circles. They were performing, auditioning, desperate to be chosen. The couple walked slowly, Bailey's leash loose in one hand, the unfinished paperwork folded in the other. They weren't looking for anything. They were just looking. Most of the kennels had volunteers stationed nearby, people ready to answer questions, share backstories, explain why this dog or that one would be perfect for the right home. The energy was hopeful, urgent. Every dog deserved a chance. But halfway down the row, there was a kennel with no volunteer, no informational card taped to the gate, no name written on the whiteboard above the door. Just a German shepherd sitting in the far corner. He wasn't barking, wasn't pacing, wasn't watching the people walk by. He faced the wall, body angled away from the gate, as if the world outside his kennel had already decided about him and he'd accepted the verdict. The couple slowed, then stopped. Around them, the noise continued. Dogs competing for attention, volunteers making their pitches, families debating which puppy had the sweetest face. But in that one kennel, there was nothing. No movement, no sound, no acknowledgement that anyone was there. It wasn't peaceful. It was something else, something that felt like surrender. The woman crouched down, instinctively, the way you do when you want to meet a dog at eye level. But the shepherd didn't turn, didn't react. His ears didn't even twitch. "Hey, buddy," she said softly. Nothing. Her husband stepped closer, leaning toward the gate. "Is he okay?" A shelter worker passing by with a mop bucket paused. "Oh, that one." She said it the way you'd reference a problem no one knows how to solve. Not with cruelty, just exhaustion. "He doesn't really engage. Been here about 6 weeks. We've tried everything." "Everything?" the man asked. The worker shrugged. "Toys, treats, different handlers. He just shuts down. Doesn't bite, doesn't growl, doesn't do anything. We can't even get him evaluated properly because he won't interact." She moved on, mop bucket sloshing, leaving them standing there. The couple looked at each other, then back at the dog. Bailey tugged gently on the leash, ready to go, ready to start his new life. The paperwork was waiting. The decision had been made. But neither of them moved, because the German shepherd finally shifted, just barely, not toward them, just enough to show he knew they were there and had chosen not to care. The woman reached through the chain link, her fingers barely crossing the threshold of the kennel. She didn't expect him to come closer. She just wanted him to know she was there. The German shepherd's ears flicked back, a small acknowledgement, but he didn't turn his head, didn't stand, didn't move toward her hand the way most dogs would, even the fearful ones, even the traumatized ones. Fear still reaches. Trauma still hopes. This dog didn't hope. That's what unsettled her. Not aggression, not anxiety, but the complete absence of expectation. He had learned that people passing his kennel meant nothing, that hands reaching toward him led nowhere, that waiting was permanent. Her husband knelt beside her. "What do you think happened to him?" She didn't answer right away. She was watching the way the shepherd breathed, slow, measured, like someone conserving energy for a marathon they didn't choose to run. His coat was dull in places, rough where it should have been smooth. Not matted, just unattended, like he'd stopped caring about himself the same way he'd stopped caring about the people walking by. "I don't know," she said finally, "but this isn't normal shutdown. This is something else." Shutdown dogs still react. They flinch, they cower, they watch you with wary eyes, calculating threat levels, deciding if you're safe. This dog wasn't calculating anything. He'd already done the math. The answer was always the same. Bailey sat between them, calm and patient, waiting for his new family to finish whatever this was. He didn't understand why they'd stopped, why they weren't moving forward, why the plan had stalled. A volunteer appeared, younger than the worker with the mop bucket, holding a clipboard. "You folks need help with something?" "This dog," the man said, nodding toward the kennel. "What's his story?" The volunteer's face shifted, not quite a frown, more like the look people get when they're asked to explain something they've tried to explain too many times. "We don't have much. He was a transfer from another county, came in about 6 weeks ago. No history, no owner surrender form, just found." "Found where?" the woman asked. "Empty house, foreclosure situation. He was locked in a basement, alone. We don't know how long." The words settled between them like stones. The volunteer continued, her voice quieter now. Animal control said the house had been sitting empty for at least 2 months, maybe longer. No food, no water. He survived on, we're not sure what. Rainwater from a leak in the foundation, maybe. Rodents, whatever he could find. The woman's hand was still extended through the gate. The shepherd still hadn't moved. "Why isn't anyone working with him?" the man asked. "We are," the volunteer said, defensive now. "He's not aggressive. He's just gone. Physically here, but not present. The behaviorist said it's learned helplessness, severe, the kind that doesn't reverse quickly, if at all." "If at all," the woman repeated. The volunteer softened. "Look, I know how it sounds, but we have limited resources. Dogs that respond to intervention get priority. Dogs that can be rehabilitated and adopted out. She hesitated. "He's been here long enough that if he doesn't show progress soon, decisions will have to be made." She didn't say what decisions. She didn't have to. The woman pulled her hand back slowly. The shepherd's ear twitched again, the only sign he'd noticed. "Come on," her husband said gently, touching her shoulder. "We should finish with Bailey." She nodded, stood, took one last look at the dog who wouldn't look back. And as they walked away, she realized what bothered her most. It wasn't the stillness. It was that the stillness didn't feel like fear. It felt like acceptance. They returned to the front desk where Bailey's paperwork waited. The coordinator looked up, smiling, relieved they were back. "Ready to finalize everything?" The woman nodded, picked up the pen, stared at the signature line. Her husband stood beside her, hands in his pockets. Neither of them spoke. The coordinator's smile dimmed slightly. "Is everything okay? Did Bailey do something during the walk?" "No," the man said quickly. "Bailey's great. He's perfect." And he was. Bailey sat at their feet, well-behaved, patient, exactly what they'd asked for. A dog who would fit into their life without demanding they rebuild it. A dog who wanted to be loved and knew how to show it. A dog who had a future. The woman set the pen down. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "The German shepherd and kennel, I didn't see a number, halfway down the corridor, the one who won't engage?" The coordinator's expression changed, professional warmth replaced by something more guarded. "What about him?" "What happens if he doesn't improve?" A pause, the kind that answers the question before words do. "We do everything we can," the coordinator said carefully, "but we're a limited intake shelter. We have capacity issues, space issues. When a dog isn't adoptable and isn't making progress toward becoming adoptable, we have to make room for animals we can help." "So he'll be euthanized?" The coordinator didn't flinch. "We don't use that word lightly, and we don't make those calls quickly. But yes, eventually, if nothing changes." The woman looked at her husband. He was already looking at her. They had reasons, good ones, logical ones. They weren't experienced with severe behavioral cases. They didn't have the training. They didn't have the time. Both of them worked full time. They didn't have the resources to hire a specialist, pay for months of therapy, manage a dog who might never recover. Bailey needed a home. Bailey wanted a home. Bailey was ready. The German shepherd didn't even know they existed. Taking him would mean starting over. No guarantees, no roadmap, just difficulty, doubt, and the very real possibility of failure, of making things worse, of adopting a dog they couldn't help and having to bring him back, which would only confirm what he already believed about people. Leaving him meant walking away, moving forward, choosing the life they'd planned. But it also meant knowing they'd seen him, knowing what would happen, knowing they'd chosen certainty over compassion because compassion was too expensive. The woman picked up the pen again. Her hand shook slightly. "Can we—" She stopped, started again. "Can we think about this?" The coordinator blinked. Think about Bailey? About everything. Her husband touched her arm, not pulling her away, just steadying her. The coordinator looked between them, then at Bailey, then at the unsigned paperwork. She'd seen this before, the moment people realize what they're really choosing. "Of course," she said quietly, "take all the time you need." They walked back outside, sat on the bench near the entrance. Bailey rested his head on the woman's knee. "We can't save everyone," the man said. "I know. He's a good dog. He deserves this." "I know." Silence. A family walked past them into the shelter, two kids bouncing with excitement, already arguing over names, the kind of adoption that would be easy, joyful, exactly what it was supposed to be. The woman scratched behind Bailey's ears. He leaned into her, trusting, content. "If we don't take him," she said slowly, "someone else will. Bailey will be fine." Her husband nodded, waited. "But if we don't take the shepherd," she didn't finish. He didn't need her to. They sat there for a long time, Bailey between them, the unsigned paperwork inside, the kennels behind them, one holding a dog ready for a future, the other holding a dog who'd stopped believing futures existed. Neither choice felt right, but one felt like something they'd carry forever. They tried to leave. Twice. The first time they made it to the parking lot, the woman opened the car door, then closed it again without getting in. She stared at the shelter entrance like it was a question she hadn't answered. "We don't know what we're doing," her husband said. Not an argument, just a fact. "I know. We could make it worse. I know. Bailey is right there, waiting for us." She nodded, kept staring at the building. He walked around the car, leaned against the hood beside her. "Talk me through it. What are you thinking?" She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was quiet. "I keep seeing him sitting there, facing the wall, like he's already decided how this ends." "Maybe he has. That's what I can't stop thinking about." She turned to face him. "What if he's right? What if we're the people who prove him right?" "We're not taking him just to prove a point." "I'm not talking about taking him. I'm talking about walking away, about him watching us choose Bailey, watching us choose the easy dog, and knowing that's how it works, that people always choose easy." Her husband was quiet for a moment. "You think he'll notice?" "I think he noticed the last 100 people who walked past his kennel. I think he's been noticing for 6 weeks." They stood there, traffic passing on the street behind them, the shelter humming with activity they couldn't see. Somewhere inside, Bailey was probably wondering where they'd gone. Somewhere else inside, the German shepherd was still facing the wall. The second time they tried to leave, they made it halfway home. The woman was driving, her husband was looking out the window. Neither of them had spoken since they'd pulled out of the parking lot. She slowed at a red light, hands tight on the steering wheel. "We had a plan. Yeah. We did the research. We made the right choice. Yeah. So why does it feel like we're running away?" He didn't answer. The light turned green. She didn't move. A car behind them honked. She pulled through the intersection, then into a gas station parking lot, put the car in park, turned off the engine. "I can't explain it," she said finally. "I can't give you a logical reason. I can't promise it won't be the hardest thing we've ever done." "Then what are you saying?" She looked at him. "I'm saying I don't think I can live with knowing I saw him and did nothing." He exhaled slowly, rubbed his face with both hands. "You know what we're signing up for, right? Months of work, maybe years, maybe never. We might pour everything we have into this and still lose." "I know." "And Bailey, someone else will adopt Bailey. He'll be fine. But this dog, if we take him and fail, we might be his last chance. That's the weight we're carrying." "I know," she said again, softer this time. He looked at her for a long moment, then reached over and restarted the car. She stared at him. "What are you doing?" turning around," he said, "before we change our minds again." They didn't speak on the drive back. The plan they'd built, the safe, manageable, predictable plan, was dissolving with every mile, and neither of them knew what they were replacing it with. Just the image of a dog who'd stopped hoping, and the weight of being the people who noticed. When they pulled back into the shelter parking lot, the coordinator was outside, talking to a volunteer. She saw them and froze mid-sentence. The woman got out of the car first, walked straight to the entrance. Her husband followed. Inside, Bailey was still in the holding area, resting on a bed someone had given him. He looked up when they approached, tail wagging, ready to go home. The coordinator appeared behind them. "You came back." "We did, but not for Bailey." The coordinator's expression shifted, surprise, then something close to resignation. "You want the shepherd. We want to try. You understand what you're taking on, right?" "No," the man said honestly, "but we understand what happens if we don't." The coordinator studied them both, then nodded slowly. "I'll get the paperwork started. Fair warning, this isn't going to be like a normal adoption. There are protocols for dogs like him, liability forms, behavioral contracts. You'll need to sign off on a lot." "That's fine. And if it doesn't work, we know," the woman interrupted gently. "We know the risks." The coordinator hesitated. Then, for the first time they'd met her, she smiled. Not the professional, hopeful smile from earlier, something quieter, more real. "His name is Gunner, or at least that's what we've been calling him. We don't know if it's real name. He doesn't respond to it." "Gunner," the woman repeated. Somewhere down the corridor, past the noise and chaos and desperate hope of every other kennel, a German shepherd sat facing a wall, not knowing that the plan had changed, not knowing that two strangers had turned their car around, not knowing that for the first time in a long time, someone had chosen the harder path. The coordinator pulled a thin manila folder from a filing cabinet, too thin for a life, but that's all there was. She set it on the desk between them, hesitated, then slid it forward. "This is everything we have." The woman opened it carefully, like it might fall apart. Inside, 3 pages, an intake form, a veterinary evaluation, a handwritten note from animal control. That was it. That was Gunner's story, reduced to fragments. The intake form was mostly blank. Owner, unknown. Surrender reason, NA, abandoned. Previous home history, none available. Behavioral notes, unresponsive. No aggression observed. Extreme withdrawal. The vet evaluation was clinical, malnourished, dehydrated, muscle atrophy, evidence of prolonged confinement, estimated age 4 to 5 years, microchip, none, no identifying marks, no tags. Then the handwritten note, the officer's field report dated 6 weeks earlier, called to 1847 Oak Ridge Lane for welfare check following foreclosure. Neighbors reported hearing scratching sounds from basement, forced entry, found male German shepherd locked in unfinished basement, no food or water source visible. Animal was lying in a corner, non-responsive to approach, no signs of aggression when secured. House appeared abandoned approximately 8 to 10 weeks based on mail accumulation and utility shutoff dates. Unclear how long animal was confined. Basement door had been deadbolted from outside. The woman read the last line twice. Deadbolted from outside. Her husband leaned over her shoulder, reading. His jaw tightened. The coordinator spoke quietly. "We don't know if he was left on purpose or if someone meant to come back and didn't. We don't know if this was neglect or cruelty or something in between. All we know is that he survived something most dogs wouldn't." "How?" the man asked. 10 weeks without food? The officer found evidence of mice in the basement, a dripping pipe. We think he did what he had to do." The woman closed the folder. Her hands were shaking. "We ran every database we have. No previous owner records, no missing dog reports matching his description, no vet records in the county system. It's like he didn't exist before that basement." Or someone made sure he wouldn't be found, the man said. The coordinator didn't disagree. The woman stared at the closed folder. 3 pages. That's what they had to work with. No name that meant anything, no history, no context for what happened before the deadbolt, before the darkness, before the waiting. Just the aftermath. The behaviorist said something else, the coordinator added, almost reluctant to continue. She said his shutdown isn't fear-based, it's learned. What's the difference? Fear means he still believes something bad might happen. Learned helplessness means he stopped believing anything he does matters, that nothing he does will change the outcome. The woman felt something crack open in her chest. Not pity, something raw. Dogs like him, the coordinator said slowly, they've been through something that taught them a very specific lesson, that hoping is more painful than giving up, so they stop. And once they stop, she trailed off. It's what? The man pressed. It's nearly impossible to undo. The room was quiet except for the muffled sounds of the shelter beyond the office door, dogs barking, volunteers laughing, families beginning their stories. The woman opened the folder again, looked at the intake photo paperclipped to the inside cover, a German shepherd staring at nothing, ribs visible, eyes empty. She'd expected to see fear in that photo, trauma, pain. Instead, she saw resignation, a dog who had calculated the cost of hope and decided it wasn't worth it. "When can we take him?" she asked. The coordinator blinked. "You still want to?" "More than before." Her husband nodded. "What do we need to do?" The coordinator pulled out another folder, this one much thicker. Adoption contract, liability waiver, behavioral assessment acknowledgement, medical release forms, emergency protocol agreement. You'll need to read all of this, sign everywhere that's highlighted, and understand that we'll need checking in regularly. If he shows signs of aggression, if the situation becomes unsafe, if you feel you can't continue, you call us immediately. No judgment, no shame. Some dogs are beyond what even the most committed adopters can handle. "Understood," the woman said. The coordinator slid a pen across the desk. As they signed each form, the woman kept glancing at the intake photo paperclipped to the inside cover. Gunnar staring at nothing, waiting for nothing, not knowing that in a few hours he'd be leaving this place, not knowing if that would make any difference at all. When the paperwork was finished, the coordinator stood. "I'll have someone bring him to the meet and greet room. We'll go over care instructions, behavioral management, emergency contacts, and then," she paused, "then he's yours." The couple followed her down the corridor, past Bailey, who had already been moved to a different kennel. Another family had asked about him while they were gone. He'd be adopted by the end of the day. Past the other dogs, still performing, still hoping, to the kennel at the end, the quiet one. Gunnar hadn't moved, still facing the wall, still waiting for nothing. The coordinator unlocked the gate. "We'll give you a few minutes. Don't expect much. He doesn't engage during transitions." She stepped inside carefully, slipped a lead over Gunnar's head. He didn't resist, didn't acknowledge, just stood when pulled gently to his feet and followed her out, head low, eyes on the ground. He walked past the couple as if they weren't there. The woman's throat tightened. This was the dog they'd chosen, the one who didn't choose back. The meet and greet room was small, sterile. A bench along one wall, a water bowl in the corner, fluorescent lights that made everything look washed out. Gunnar entered the room the way someone enters a cell, with the tired familiarity of someone who's been moved before and knows it doesn't mean anything. The coordinator unclipped his lead and stepped back. He walked to the farthest corner, sat, faced the wall. The couple sat on the bench, waited. The coordinator stood by the door, clipboard in hand. This is normal for him. Like I said, don't expect engagement. The goal right now is just coexistence. The woman wanted to reach for him, to kneel down, speak softly, offer her hand the way she had through the kennel gate, but something told her not to, not yet. because this wasn't about what she needed, it was about what he could handle. Her husband broke the silence first. How do we start? The coordinator considered. Honestly, you don't. You just let him be. Let him decompress. Don't force interaction. Don't crowd him. Let him decide if and when he's ready to acknowledge you exist. And if he never does? She didn't sugarcoat it. Then you'll have to decide what you can live with. The woman stared at Gunner's back, his shoulders, the way his head stayed low, ears slightly back, not in fear, but in something closer to defeat. "What if we can't fix him?" she asked quietly. The coordinator's expression softened. "Then you love him anyway, and you give him the best life he's capable of having, even if it's not the life you imagined." The man leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "We've never done this before. We don't know what we're doing." No one does, not with dogs like Gunner. There's no manual for this, no 5-step program. You'll have to figure it out as you go, and you'll get it wrong sometimes. The question is whether you can handle getting it wrong and still showing up the next day. The woman looked at her husband. He was staring at Gunner the way you stare at a puzzle with missing pieces, knowing it's incomplete, knowing it might stay that way, trying to decide if you can live with the gaps. "We could still back out," he said. Not a suggestion, just an acknowledgement. "We could," she agreed. "No one would blame us." "No." He turned to face her. "But we're not going to." It wasn't a question, it was something heavier, a recognition that they'd already crossed a line they couldn't uncross, that walking away now would mean carrying this moment forever, the image of Gunner sitting in the corner, waiting to be returned to his kennel, waiting to run out of time. She nodded. "We're not going to." The coordinator made a note on her clipboard. "All right, let me go over what you need to know before you leave." She ran through the list methodically. Feeding schedule, small meals, slowly introduced. His stomach couldn't handle much at once. Exercise, gentle walks, no dog parks, avoid overstimulation. Medical, recheck in 2 weeks, watch for signs of stress-induced illness. Behavioral, no punishment, no raised voices, patience as a strategy, not a virtue. "And if he runs?" the man asked. "He won't. Dogs like Gunner don't run. They shut down. If he's overwhelmed, he'll freeze or hide. Your job is to give him a place where freezing or hiding isn't necessary." She handed them a folder thicker than Gunner's entire file. Emergency contacts, behaviorist recommendations. Most won't take a case this severe, but I've highlighted the ones who might. Support groups for reactive and traumatized dogs, and my direct line. If you need anything, you call. The woman took the folder. It felt heavier than it should. "One more thing," the coordinator said, her voice dropping. "You're going to have moments where you question this, where you wonder if you made the right choice, where you look at him and feel like you're failing because he's not getting better fast enough, or at all." She paused, making sure they were listening. When that happens, don't measure success by how much he's changed. Measure it by the fact that he's still here, that he's safe, that he's not in that basement anymore. The woman's throat tightened. She nodded. The coordinator clipped the lead back onto Gunner's collar. He stood without resistance, head still low, and followed her to the door. "You ready?" she asked the couple. No, the woman thought, but she stood anyway. Her husband reached for her hand, squeezed once. They walked out of the shelter together, Gunner between them, not looking at either one, just moving forward because the lead told him to. In the parking lot, they opened the back of their car. A bed they'd bought for Bailey was still there, untouched. Gunner stood at the edge of the car, staring into it like it was another kennel, another room with walls. The man lifted him gently. Gunner didn't fight, didn't help, just let himself be moved and set him on the bed. Gunner curled into the smallest version of himself, faced the back of the seat. The woman closed the hatch, got into the driver's seat, didn't start the car. Her husband looked back through the rear window. Gunnar hadn't moved. "We just chose the hardest thing we've ever done," he said quietly. "I know. And we don't know if it'll work. I know." He turned to face her. "But we're not going to." It wasn't a question, it was something heavier, a recognition that they'd already crossed a line they couldn't uncross, that walking away now would mean carrying this moment forever, the image of Gunnar sitting in the corner, waiting to be returned to his kennel, waiting to run out of time. She nodded. "We're not going to." She started the car and drove toward a future neither of them could predict, with a dog who didn't believe in futures. But they did, and for now, that had to be enough. They had prepared the house, cleared a quiet space in the corner of the living room, away from windows, away from foot traffic, away from anything that might feel like exposure. A bed, a water bowl, a few toys they weren't sure he'd touch. When they arrived home, Gunnar didn't wait to be invited out of the car. He simply stood when the hatch opened, let himself be guided down, and followed the lead into the house without hesitation or interest. Inside, he stopped in the entryway, scanned the room once, methodical, detached, and then walked directly to the corner they'd prepared, lay down, faced the wall. The woman set his food bowl nearby, kibble mixed with wet food, measured carefully according to the shelter's instructions. "Gunnar," she said softly, "food." He didn't turn. She left the bowl there and stepped back. Her husband stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, watching. "How long do we wait?" "I don't know." They gave him space, moved through the house quietly, tried to establish some version of normal, but every few minutes one of them would glance toward the corner. Gunnar hadn't moved, hadn't touched the food, hadn't even shifted position. An hour passed. The woman crouched a few feet away from him, not close enough to invade, just close enough to be seen if he chose to look. "Hey, buddy, you're safe here. I know you don't believe that yet, but you are." No response. She stayed there for a while, talking to him in low tones, not expecting answers, just offering sound that wasn't a command or a threat. Then she stood, walked away, let him be. By evening, the food was still untouched. "Should we be worried?" her husband asked. "The coordinator said he might not eat for a day or two. Stress, new environment. And if he doesn't eat after that?" She didn't answer. Night came. They debated whether to leave him downstairs or bring him to the bedroom. The shelter had recommended keeping him close, not for his comfort, but so they could monitor him, watch for signs of distress, aggression, self-harm. They carried his bed upstairs, set it in the corner of their room, as far from their bed as the space allowed. Gunnar followed the bed with his eyes, but didn't move until the man gently guided him upstairs. Once in the bedroom, Gunnar went directly to his bed, circled once, and lay down. Same position, same wall-facing posture. The couple got ready for bed in silence, brushed their teeth, changed clothes, turned off the lights. In the darkness, they could hear him breathing, slow, even, not the breath of sleep, the breath of someone waiting for something to happen. The woman stared at the ceiling. "Do you think he knows we're trying?" Her husband was quiet for a moment. "I don't think he cares." It wasn't cruel, it was just honest. She rolled onto her side, facing the corner where Gunnar lay. She couldn't see him in the dark, but she knew he was there, still, silent, untouched by their effort. What if this is it? What if this is as good as it gets? Then we'll deal with it. But what if he's miserable? What if we took him out of the shelter and he's still just existing? What's the point? Her husband exhaled slowly. The point is he's not in a basement. He's not locked behind a deadbolt. He's not waiting to be euthanized because no one wanted the hard case. But he doesn't know that. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But we do. She wanted to argue. wanted to say that wasn't enough, that rescue was supposed to mean transformation, healing, proof that love could undo damage. But she didn't say any of that, because deep down, she knew her husband was right. Some victories don't announce themselves. Some rescues don't come with before and after photos that make you cry. Some dogs don't wag their tails and lick your face and make you feel like a hero. Some just survive, and maybe that has to be enough. She closed her eyes, tried to sleep. Around 2 in the morning, she awoke to a sound. Subtle, almost nothing. Movement. She stayed still, listening. Gunnar had shifted, not much, just enough to adjust his position. And then, after a pause, she heard it. Drinking. He was drinking from the water bowl they'd left near his bed. She didn't move, didn't turn on the light, didn't acknowledge it. But she felt something shift in her chest. Not hope exactly, not relief, just the smallest recognition that he'd done something, made a choice, decided for whatever reason he was thirsty enough to care. When morning came, the food bowl was still full, but the water bowl was empty. The woman refilled it without comment, set it down, walked away. Gunnar watched her this time, just for a second, then looked away. It wasn't trust, it wasn't connection, but it was the first time he'd looked at her and seen something other than a wall. The woman took the empty water bowl to the sink. Her hands were shaking. Her husband came up behind her. "You okay?" She nodded, didn't trust her voice. "It's going to take time." "I know." "And it might not be enough." "I know." He wrapped his arms around her. They stood there, looking out the window at the morning light, while behind them, in the corner of the living room, a German shepherd lay facing the wall, still waiting, but for the first time since they'd met him, waiting in a place where the door wasn't locked. The first week was a study in patience they didn't know they had. Gunnar ate, eventually, small amounts, only when they weren't looking. The bowl would be full when they left the room and empty when they returned, as if a ghost lived in their house instead of a dog. He drank more consistently, walked when leashed, though his eyes stayed on the ground, his body moving on autopilot. He didn't pull, didn't sniff, didn't acknowledge other dogs or people they passed. He just walked because the lead told him to. At night, he slept in the corner of their bedroom. Every morning they woke to find him in the exact same position, curled tight, nose tucked under his tail, eyes already open, watching the door. Always watching the door. The woman started to understand what that meant. He wasn't watching for them to come in. He was watching for them to leave, waiting for the moment the house went quiet and he was alone again, waiting to confirm what he already knew, that this was temporary. On the 8th day, something changed. She was sitting on the floor, back against the couch, reading. Gunnar was in his corner, as always. She'd stopped trying to engage him directly, stopped calling his name, stopped reaching out, stopped expecting anything. She was just there, existing in the same space. And then, from the corner of her eye, she saw him lift his head. Not much, just enough to look at her instead of the wall. She didn't move, didn't make eye contact, just kept reading, pretending she hadn't noticed. 5 minutes passed, then 10. When she finally glanced up, Gunnar's head was down again, but his body had shifted, not toward her, just less aggressively away. It was the smallest thing, meaningless to anyone else. To her, it felt like the ground shifting beneath her feet. The second change came 2 weeks in. Her husband was working from home, sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop. Gunnar was in his usual spot in the living room, separate, distant. And then, without prompting, Gunnar stood, walked slowly into the kitchen, stopped a few feet from the table. The man froze mid-keystroke. Gunnar didn't come closer, didn't ask for anything, just stood there, looking at nothing in particular, his presence a question he didn't know how to ask. The man waited, barely breathing. After a long moment, Gunnar turned and walked back to the living room, lay down in his corner, But he'd come, on his own, for no reason they could name. The man called his wife into the room. He just came in here. What did you do? Nothing. I didn't even look at him. They stood there staring at the empty doorway like it held answers they couldn't see. The third change took 3 weeks. The woman was sitting on the couch. Gunnar was across the room. She'd stopped hoping for more than coexistence, stopped measuring progress, stopped waiting for the moment he'd wag his tail or rest his head on her knee or do any of the things dogs do when they love you. She was scrolling through her phone, half paying attention, when she felt it. Weight. Warmth. She looked down. Gunnar had moved, silently, slowly, and now he was lying on the floor beside the couch, not touching her, not looking at her, just near. Her breath caught. She didn't move, didn't speak, didn't risk breaking whatever fragile thing had just happened. She sat there for an hour, phone forgotten, body perfectly still. Gunnar stayed. When her husband came home, he found them like that, her on the couch, Gunnar on the floor beside her, both of them pretending it didn't mean anything. He met her eyes. She shook her head slightly. Don't say anything. He didn't. But that night when they went to bed, Gunnar didn't go straight to his corner. He stood in the doorway of their room for a moment, hesitating, calculating, and then walked to his bed. But this time he didn't curl into the smallest version of himself. He stretched out, long, loose. And for the first time since they'd brought him home, he fell asleep before they did. The woman lay in the dark, listening to his breathing change, slow and deep, the breath of someone who wasn't waiting for something bad to happen. She reached for her husband's hand in the darkness. He's letting go, she whispered. Of what? The door. He's not watching it anymore. Her husband was quiet. Then, do you think he trusts us? She thought about it, about the weeks of silence, the slow, painful inches of progress, the moments that felt like nothing and everything at once. No, she said finally, not yet, but I think he's starting to believe we're not going anywhere. Is that enough? She didn't answer right away because the truth was complicated. Trust would take months, maybe years, maybe never in the way they'd imagined. But belief? Belief that the door would still be unlocked tomorrow, that the food would still appear, that he wouldn't wake up back in the basement? That was something. Yeah, she said quietly, for now it's enough. In the corner, Gunnar's ear twitched, then settled. He didn't lift his head, didn't open his eyes, didn't watch the door. He just slept. And in the morning, when the woman woke, she found him in a new position, not facing the wall, facing her. Still distant, still guarded, still uncertain, but present. For the first time, fully present. She didn't move, didn't want to startle him, didn't want to ask for more than this. But she smiled, small, quiet, and Gunnar's tail, just the tip of it, moved. Once. Not a wag, not joy, just acknowledgement. I see you. I'm here. Maybe that's enough. Gunnar's story didn't end with a miracle. It ended with a choice to show up every day for a dog who couldn't promise he'd ever meet them halfway. Some rescues don't come with transformation montages or viral happy endings. They come with small, hard-won moments that no one else will ever see. If you believe those moments matter, subscribe. Comment below if you've ever chosen the harder path and what it taught you. Thank you for watching.